Happy Labor Day, everyone. While some folks are grilling up some hot dogs and sipping cheap beer, most of us riders are dreading the end of the season. But are you getting prepared for one last ride, or are you putting your motorcycle in the garage for hibernation? At the same time, we're going to talk about how the industry might need to put a trickle charger on themselves for the winter. Welcome back to Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Motorcycling, and let's talk about that. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I am Mole Man. This is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Motorcycling, my one-man podcast, my ramble session where I rant, rave, and just sometimes spiral into madness. But anyway, so we actually are coming to you today on Labor Day 2025, just to date this video. So happy Labor Day if you're watching it today, or if you've had a Labor Day recently, happy Labor Day again. But what we want to talk about today first is a little bit of an industry update. So it was not only maybe one or two episodes of the Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Motorcycling that we were talking about KTM and the industry in general and how it was going. So a little bit of an update on that, because like I said in the intro, it seems like a trickle charger might be in order, because through June, U.S. new motorcycle sales were down almost 10% in comparison to 2024. 271,000 units versus 298,000 units. So why is that? Well, basically, dealership traffic is apparently down 40%. So the number of people going into dealers, looking at bikes, things like that is down 40%. Now, is that just now the people who weren't going to buy anyway are not showing up to the dealership? Or is that prospective buyers are now not showing up to the dealership because of things like tariffs, interest rates, and all these things? Maybe they don't know about the fact that you can take advantage of that $10,000 interest write-off that just happened in the big beautiful bill. So it's interesting that the dealership traffic is down. That explains why new bike sales are down, at least in some sense, right? So the interesting. The next thing that we find here, though, is that used bike sales are actually up slightly. So kind of makes sense. When new bikes are being sold, the used bikes probably are being sold a little more. People are trying to save money. Once again, maybe a sign that interest rates, the economy in general, tariffs, things like that could be hitting the industry a little bit. Now, mind you, with the tariff talk, just to pivot for 1 second, I believe there just was an appellate judge, I think it was an appellate judge, that says the tariffs are mostly illegal now that Trump is trying to do. So what will we see there? Are the tariffs going to stick? Are they not going to stick? Will that help drive sales go back up going into next year? Will it help drive the new models because they're going to look cheaper? If all of a sudden the tariffs go away and compared to this year, all of a sudden the next year comes out and it's like the same exact price for a new model, but I don't know. I'm just speculating. So anyway, that's U.S. sales down 10% compared to last year, maybe a little more than 10%. And that is apparently the worst start to a year in over a decade, which is interesting. Used bike sales are up. We've talked about KTM before, right? I think we said at about the halfway through point of the year, they had sold 100,000 units, mainly out of the India Bajaj. I think that was even talked about then. Well, apparently that number is actually closer to 85,000, which is 40% lower than last year. And almost half of those were not even KTM branded bikes. So KTM touting numbers that are sounding better than they were in the fall with the whole bankruptcy, alleged, blah, 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 financial issues they were having. They got funding, but apparently most of their sales are not coming out of their own brand. It's coming out of just their holdings in Bajaj, which is the India company that they have. Sparkling water. That's the Indian company that they have that's, I think, going to take over some of the manufacturing of their own KTM branded bikes, but they also make other branded bikes, blah, blah, blah. So, KTM numbers, not as good as they were touting them halfway through the year, basically is what we're saying there. I know how the bikes are selling are not even KTM, if you will. Though it seems like still the restructuring at KTM has worked. Sales are down in general. So possibly this is just more waves for them on the way back to being KTM again. Hopefully they figure out some lessons during this whole thing and don't go back in trouble, but we'll see. Oh, let's see. I had other notes. Basically, something nobody really cares about is EVs. Electric vehicles in general are up, so as well as electric motorcycles. Now, they're up, but they're up from potentially numbers that weren't very big. So I think what it is showing in the market is that I want to say it was like 4%. Pardon me for a moment while I look for this. But the electric vehicles and the used bikes were the two categories that were up in comparison to general sales. 7%. Okay, so electric vehicles, electric two-wheelers are booming, if you will, with over 4.4 million sold in the first half of 2025. That's globally, not necessarily in the United States, a 7% jump over last year. They believe that this market could triple by 2034 from about $40 billion market today to $110 billion market in 2034. I believe most of those predictions do not come true, and I don't know if we should hold our breath or not. I think that landscape is going to be ever-changing and ever-dynamic. Looking at the electric, how is that going to end up? Swappable batteries, and that's a whole another episode. So, I think the takeaway here is that dealerships are pretty empty right now, and sales in general are down. US, they're down 10%. KTM specifically might have not been, showing the correct statistics about halfway through the year, and they're down about 40% compared to the last year, which I think was down compared to the year before that. Anyway, so industry right now might need a trickle charger on them going into 2025. Not 2025, holy moly, it's going to be 2026, folks. It's already September. So we will be talking about, as we get closer to the end of the year, some of the new models coming out, some of the announcements coming from the manufacturers, things like that here on Life, Liberty, and Pursuit of Motorcycling. So just stay tuned for that. So with that said, let's get to the end of the season and what might be happening in our own garages soon. End of season rituals. So we all are familiar typically with the whole drain your carbs, put in good fuel, ethanol-free fuel into your tank, change your oil, don't let the old oil sit in the bike over the winter. These are the typical things that we're probably going to start thinking about doing here soon, depending where you live. Obviously, up here in Michigan, we might have another month or two of decent riding, but it's starting to become even slim. Mornings are getting a lot cooler, things like that. So, with all that said, I think something that we don't talk about a lot is how the end of the season is also a time to reflect on yourself and how your season went, and like the trips that you took, the places maybe that you're thinking about going next year, as well as what was working, what wasn't working. what should I start doing instead? What should I stop doing? Maybe you learned a better way to pack your motorcycle for the trips going forward, things like that. Maybe you've realized that you want to take longer trips than you've ever taken before. This is a great time to start looking at that, because not only are you going to put the motorcycle away and whatnot, but a lot of this stuff is still fresh in your mind, right? It's an aspect of motorcycling. I'm not saying everyone has to do this. Motorcycling to you might just be something fun you do on the weekends and you go about your day the rest of the time. But to a lot of people, I think motorcycling holds a deeper meaning. It holds a reverence to them. And this is a great time to just, even if it's just take a minute and sit down in your garage like I'm doing, just look at your bike, enjoy the nice weather at the end of the year, and just kind of think about what did you do this year? Did you ride enough? Enough meaning as much as you wanted to. Did you ride as far as you wanted to? Maybe there was a trip you didn't get to take because of X factor here, Y factor there, right? And, start thinking about the next year and start thinking about the goals that you want to have. You can grow with motorcycling just as much as you can have fun. I'm not saying you have to not have fun. That could be your goals, is to have more fun than you did last. Maybe you want to learn how to wheelie. Maybe you want to learn how to stunt. Maybe you want to get a Goldwing and ride 1,000 miles in a day. Maybe you want to do it on a Grom, right? I think the point is you need to start taking an inventory of these thoughts, these reflections, and this is a great time of year to do those things, because there's going to be a time if you didn't do them, you're going to question why. Why didn't I had the idea? I thought about it for years on end, but then I never did it. Right? And maybe this is a great year, a great time to say, hey, look, if I want to do these things, if I want to have these experiences, make these memories. Memories are something that we get to retire on. Memories are something we will always have. I think that's important. I think that's maybe a disconnect from the thinking of younger generations right now to potentially older generations, is that we're in our lives trying to collect those experiences, collect those memories, when that is not your priority, maybe as an older generation right now. Maybe you're starting to live off of your memories, things like that. And that's not to drive a fence between generations. I think there's plenty of people in all generations that think the same. But that's a common critique of the millennial generation, is that you just are looking for experiences. You don't care about the future, whatnot, and so forth. But our futures, our memories, and all these things can build off of these experiences as well. So I think this is just a great time of year, not only to change the oil in your bike, to clean your carbs if that's what you think you need to do. Drain your carbs before you put your bike away for the winter, FYI. If you do that every single year, I guarantee you're not going to be cleaning your carbs out all the time. Anyway, rant. But while you're doing those things, take an inventory of yourself. Use this as an opportunity to grow. Use this as an opportunity to learn more about yourself, more about what you want to do. Write down those goals and commit to them. I say things a lot in a way that doesn't sound like I'm committing to them, right? I say I think I'm gonna, or I'm thinking of planning a trip, right? And it might be semantics, because in my mind, a lot of times, by the time I say that, it's a lot more set in stone than it is sounding like. But instead of thinking of planning the trip, plan the trip. I'm going to go to Glacier National Park next year. That's now my goal. So, put in the comments down below a goal of your own. Is there a place you want to go? It might not be thousands of miles away. It could only be 100 miles away, but maybe you've been thinking about going to it for years and you just haven't done it. And so use this time of year now to say, hey, maybe I didn't do it this year, but now I have all winter to plan it for next year. I have a lot more time now to, maybe make sure my bike is in the tip-top shape it can be. Maybe finally time to rebuild the forks on your bike or something like that to make yourself feel enabled to go on this trip. So just remember, as we wind down the seasons, we wind down the riding season specifically, that it's not just a great time to reflect on your bike, to clean it up, to do maintenance, to do all these things to it, to think about how to make it even better, how to modify it, how to, what do you think will make it a better bike for you, but what can you do to make yourself better for your bike, So think about that. Think about how you're going to reflect on the year. Think about how you're going to make yourself better for next year for the motorcycle season. And it might just be realizing you want to have more fun. You want to ride more. You want to commit to just being out on your bike. And it might not have any larger goals than that. So don't take this as you need to be thinking deeper. You need to, you need to be educated. Or it's not about that. Just make sure you're doing what you want to do. Make sure you're making goals, right? So, before I continue to ramble, I think what I want to say is that at the end of this season, let me know what your goals are. Let me know what you want to accomplish next year, even if it's just having a little bit more fun. So the takeaway here today, whether the industry is up or down, whether you're trying to put your bike away for the year, you're chasing the last warm days, the point here is this time of year isn't about endings, it's about setups. You're setting yourself up for the next season, you're setting yourself up for the next ride, and the industry is setting itself up for the next chapter. So, I want to thank you for joining me today on Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Motorcycling. Let me know what your goals are down below. Let me know what you think about the motorcycling industry and where it's going for 2026. Thank you for being here. Like, comment, subscribe. I am Mole Man. This is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Motorcycling. Thank you for being here, and good day.